My name is Nihal. To start off, I want to introduce the importance of music today in today's society. First off, I just want to talk about how, like, every day in our lifestyle, we listen to music, like, constantly, like, in the car, while doing homework, like, in the shower. And I want to specifically talk about EDM, or electronic dance music. It emerged into the 20th century, and I just want to talk about how EDM actually is like a bigger category than people think it is. It's not just like specifically just like electro with like dubstep and like bass drops, but it actually goes into like a lot of like pop, and even some artists like Calvin Harris like introduced like country music mixed with EDM, which is like what EDM really is, like anything really. And one of the major claims that I wanted to discuss today was how EDM festivals in the modern day are focused on music and community rather than drugs like they used to be in the 20th century. With my secondary claims, I wanted to highlight how modern day EDM music festivals have actually transitioned from that drug stage to being about music. My second claim is how modern day EDM festivals are safer than the alternative of like underground raves. And my last secondary claim is how drug-related deaths and problems actually occur outside of just EDM festivals. Like people nowadays focus it on EDM festivals where drugs are like people OD, but it's actually seen in a lot more places. So with my first point, with the modern day EDM festivals going from drugs to music, there's an organization called Insomniac, which was started by Pascal Rotello in the 90s. And he actually, his biggest motivation to do it was because he grew up in the 90s where EDM was emerging. And he fell in love with EDM like right away, like that's like what he was about. And as it was getting bigger, it actually went from being about music to being about drugs. And like there's actually points in like underground raves that you could read about where people actually, like the DJs would like go off the stage and they just like take drugs and they just be like with the crowd instead. And the music would just stop because people are like just so obsessed with these drugs. So with Pascal Rotello, he actually wanted to stop this, and with my he actually had in LA Weekly they actually quoted an article where methamphetamine was actually being taken over in 1994. The Weekly Party known as Sketchpad was so meth-based that people ended up strewing on the floor, passed out as the sun came out. And Rotello responded to this quote in this article, saying that this was like everything I was against and this was a nightmare. So with EDM, he used EDM to actually create like a full-on experience with like visuals and music, which takes away a lot from the drugs. My second point was how modern day EDM music festivals provide a safer experience than they do if you were going to an underground rave. And this quote by the Fader, which is an online magazine, what they said was the Electric Zoo and Electric Daisy Carnival dispatched young medical workers into crowds to hand out water to discreetly help revelers and bag drug-induced states. At Electronic Daisy Carnival, in particular, this supplements the screen processing, bag searches, shoe removal, pat-downs that hasn't changed significantly in recent years. We've invested a lot of money in ID scanners, and all events are now 18 over. We found that to be effective, and Insomniac's work, we found them to be effective. So basically, with all this new, they take a lot more precautions in these festivals because they're really mainstream now. They're in the news. Like people don't want these to get they don't want to get sued because they're so big now. Like Insomniac's like one of the biggest companies out there that runs raves. So with that, they actually another point about that was proper healthcare is available as precautions, and they actually ensure everyone's safety that way with like there are medical tents like around every corner of like if you go to a music festival, every corner literally has like a medical tent or at least someone who can attend to you if you're like in need of help. My last point was how drug-related deaths and problems occur everywhere, yet EDM at music festivals tend to be focused on and due to the past drug problems in the 90s. According to the Fader, drug-related deaths aren't necessarily more prevalent at raves than other types of music festivals. For instance, 10 attendees have died at Monaro alone in the past 12 years. And Benar is basically a music festival where they have genres such as rock, country, and alternative music, which you can see like they've had 12 deaths, 10 deaths in the past 12 years, which is a significant amount, and it's like significant enough where you could see that EDM isn't the only place where people are actually dealing with ODs and stuff like that. And my last point for that was this is the director of operations for the Movement Electronic Music Festival in Detroit. Stated, when something unfortunate happens like a death or bad hospitalization, the first response is always towards the promoter. Were they taking proper steps to make sure it's a safe environment? But at the same time, if you put basically the population of a small city in a concentrated space for a certain amount of time, things are going to happen. So basically, he's just pointing out that just because like bad things are happening at certain rates doesn't mean you can just generalize all these events. Like people focus on these just because of the problem, like the drug problems in the 90s, and they're happening everywhere. Yet people choose to, like, the media chooses to like show this rather than show like other people are in like their like rooms all the time, like in like apartment buildings. But those aren't going to the news because they're not related to like a huge company. And so because organizations like Insomniac are becoming mainstream events for people who enjoy EDM, in the modern day, better precautions can be taken to control drug usage and provide a better experience for everyone. Thank you.
Okay, the proposition has like multiple parts and dependent clauses in it. I think you need to kind of rework it a little bit. I get the general idea of where you're headed with this. The phrasing is just a little convoluted, and so to be clearer, it would be best to maybe rephrase it in a couple of different places. There is a good preview of what the supporting points are going to be, though. I thought that you did a reasonable job in the body of the speech signposting those points as you got to them. The supporting material on the individual points is a little inconsistent. On the first point, you've got the example of this one person who's involved with this. They've got a company or an organization that they founded. I'm not sure if it's the same company or organization that later on you're quoting, or if they just share a title, Insomniac. That's a little bit confusing, but you've got that example about how they feel about these things at raves and what they want to do about them. I think it's a little hard to generalize from that particular experience, and you might want to be looking for additional information to support that point. It's also kind of an ambiguous point, so I think that it's as background information it might be useful. As a claim on which you're basing an argument, I'm not sure that's as important. The second point, though, is much more appropriate for the claim of fact issue that you're dealing with. The notion that we are that they take precautions, they're interested in having a safe environment, they're avoiding promoting the use of drugs. I think that those are somewhat documented here, although it does seem to suggest that because they have so much medical assistance available that they think they're going to need that much medical assistance. I think that's an interesting piece of information that could easily be interpreted the other direction. And then the comparison on the deaths on the third point, is okay, although it's, like I said, a little ambiguous. We only have the one example that you point to as being problematic for EDM type events. And then later on you said, well, you know, in other kinds of venues, we've had 10 people die in the last 12 years at these kinds of events. And I think that that's a good kind of comparison to be making, except that I don't know what the parallel numbers are for any EDM events. I don't know if we're being given that number someplace and I missed it, or if all you had was the one example and apparently there aren't any others. I think that seems a little bit dubious. So I think you've left out the comparative part of the argument there. The presentation, you have a tendency to look down while you're speaking. There's a little bit of reading that's going on there, and you look a little uncomfortable sometimes. It's just think natural anxiety that's coming out. More experience makes that easier to deal with. All right, thank you.